Welcome back to the Catalyst of Development podcast, where our purpose is to help you find yours. This is episode 16, Destroy Your Enemies. Now, I'm sure that some of you clicked on this podcast or video just because of the title, intrigued by the possibilities of what we could even be discussing today. I got news for you. I got news for all of you. You're in a fight right now. We all are, right? We are in a fight. There's opposition. There's someone trying to stop you. A bunch of huge someones trying to stop you from reaching your goals, dreams, and your aspirations. Make no mistake, you're in a fight every day. Every single day, you are getting stared down by your enemies. Who are these enemies, you may ask? Well, that's simple. Fear, self-doubt, negativity, overthinking. The list goes on and on. These are the enemies that I'm talking about. So yeah, I'm sure that's not exactly what most of y'all expected. But make no mistake, we're here today to discuss destroying your enemies. So I encourage you to stick around. I promise it's going to be worth it. Right? Because fear, self-doubt, overthinking, all these enemies that we face on a daily basis, they're some of your worst enemies. They're the ones keeping you from reaching your goals. They're the ones keeping you from reaching your fullest potential. And that's what I want to talk about today, right? We're first going to talk about where some of these enemies come from. And then we're going to talk about some actionable steps that you can take starting today, along with our pro tips, right, on how to overcome some of these enemies. And I'm going to be real with you. The majority of our time is going to be spent on these actionable steps because I need you to gain the confidence to overcome, or in this case, destroy your enemies. So let's not wait any longer. You go ahead and punch in that code so we can start talking together on how to destroy these enemies. Self-improvement expert Dale Carnegie once said that inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer fear, don't just sit home and think about it. Go out and start getting busy. So where do these enemies come from? There's a few of them I thought about. I kind of jotted them down really quickly, but I think it stems from, a lot of us got bullied when we were younger, right? And it left scars on us that some of us still deal with today. But some of you out there right now, even if you're adults and have kids of your own, you're still being bullied and you don't even realize it. And no, I don't mean by the kid next door or the kid down the street. That mean kid, that the one that's trying to take your lunch money. No, I mean you're being bullied by these enemies of fear, self-doubt, self-sabotage, negativity. No, that's who you're being bullied by. And it's holding you back more than you even realize. You see, we are conditioned. We're conditioned from the news, the social media. If you think about it, we're constantly being told that we're not good enough. And if you don't believe me, the next time you're watching TV or surfing the web, pay attention to the commercials and the advertisements that you're seeing constantly, that are constantly flowing through, right? All of them are about you not being good enough. Oh, you're not pretty enough? Well, here's some makeup. Here's some makeup to make you prettier because you're obviously not pretty enough. Oh, you're not fit enough? Here's some exercise equipment, or here's a workout plan for you because obviously you're not fit enough. Oh, you're not educated enough. Oh, go ahead and try going to this college. Try going to that college. Here, learn from this or learn from that. You're not educated enough. No, we constantly get poured into us, self-doubt, fear, negativity, constantly on a daily basis. And as much as we try to fight against it, we can't deny that it doesn't take root just a little bit within our mental state. And we have to deal with that. Some of us even had to deal with these enemies from our upbringing: parents, teachers, friends, peers. How many times have you been told that you're not good enough? Or somebody passive aggressively just made a little joke, jabbing at your intelligence or your abilities? That stuff starts to weigh on people. That stuff starts to slowly chip away, and then we start believing it, right? That enemy of fear, self doubt, and all this other stuff, a lot of those were given to us at a very young age, and we don't even realize it. We've been harboring them for years, and we don't even realize it. And lastly, I think a lot of it comes from comparing ourselves to others. Right? I once read that comparison is the quickest road to disappointment. But we compare other people's highlight reels to our everyday lives. That's not reality, but that's what we do. And we're going to get into a little bit more of that here in a bit. So let's jump right into these steps, right? Because this is where I want to spend the majority of our time. Now, I jotted down 10 actionable steps that you can start taking today to start defeating some of these enemies. Now, these steps are in no particular order, so I'm just going to jump right in. The first step: you need to stop making excuses. Period. Take some ownership. Stop making excuses. Excuses only sound good to the people who are making them. Right? We typically make excuses for one of two reasons. First, because we didn't do something we know we should have done. Or second, we did something we know we should not have done. We have got to stop making excuses. No more. Accept accountability and press. Number two, take a close look at the people around you. Take a close look at your inner circle. Jim Rohn once said that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So, if you're the 6th person and you're hanging around 5 millionaires, chances are you're going to be the 6th millionaire. On the flip side of that, if you're hanging around 5 negative people who do nothing but gripe and complain all the time, chances are you will be the 6th. So pay close attention to your inner circle. Number 3, take a close look at your diet. And no, I don't mean food. I mean what you are consuming mentally. Ask yourself, what kind of diet are you feeding your mental state? What are you reading? What does your social media feed look like? What are you listening to? You need to make sure that all of these things that you're ingesting are contributing to your growth and development and not detracting from it. So pay attention to your diet. Number 4, practice self-compassion. It always amazes me how understanding and compassionate we are with others, right? But if we make that same exact mistake or stumble in the same way, we'll beat the living mess out of ourselves. You need to start practicing the same compassion for yourself that you give to others. When you do make a mistake or stumble, before immediately jumping to criticizing and judging yourself, ask yourself this one question: what would I tell someone I love if they were facing a similar situation? It completely changes your mindset when you ask yourself that question, because we tend to forget that we are someone we love. Number 5, stop comparing yourself to others. Now, this gets back to one of the reasons, where these enemies came from. And I already touched on how comparison is one of the quickest roads to disappointment. But you need to stop comparing your normal life to what you see on other people's social medias, right? You need to understand that they're only giving you their best. Their best vacations, their winning moments. Hardly anybody posts struggles on social media, right? They're not going through the obstacles and the challenges they face. Only their triumphs, never the tragedies. They're not showing you real life. And when you're seeing these highlight reels, what you're doing is comparing it to your everyday life, right? Don't you think it's funny though, how when we compare ourselves, we always compare ourselves to those that are doing better than us, right? It's never a comparison for those that are doing worse off or that may have less, right? Because let's be honest, that would show how fortunate and blessed a lot of us really are, and that doesn't fit our negative narrative. Hmm. Something to think about. Step 6, talk to yourself. Do not listen to yourself. It's said when people are struggling, they continue to struggle longer because they're listening to themselves more than they are talking to themselves. So let's think about that for a minute. We previously touched on how we're conditioned to be negative, right? We talked about that a little earlier. As such, our internal thoughts just pop into our head. And to be honest, they're often extremely negative and unproductive. We have less control over them than we do with our external words, right? We have to pay attention to what we say. We have to pay attention to the words that are coming out of our mouth. We have to deliberately think about the words we are going to say when something pops in our head internally and we say it within our inner voice. We don't think about it, it just comes, right? So if you find yourself having these reoccurring negative thoughts, try talking to yourself in a more positive and compassionate way. Number 7, stop giving these enemies your power, right? And when I say your power, what you're really doing is giving them power. And you're giving them power by giving them the one thing that they need: your attention. If you want to truly minimize the impact these enemies have on your life, you need to start taking away their strongest power: your attention. By no means am I telling you to ignore these enemies, right? We cannot ignore these enemies. But to solely focus on them, to give them all of your attention, to allow them to override your daily thoughts, is only giving them more power. And the more power your enemy has, the more likely they are to defeat you. So find ways to take your mind and attention off of these enemies. Find ways to distract yourself if that's what you need. Number 8, ask for help, their strength and vulnerability. You need to lose the pride. You need to lose the ego. Asking for help is one of the bravest things that a human being can do. You need to understand that there is, in fact, strength in vulnerability. So if you are struggling with some of these enemies, ask your support system. Ask those closest to you for help. Just like there's strength in vulnerability, there's power in numbers. The more people you get on your team and the more people you get on your side, the more likely you are to overcome some of these enemies. Not to mention, some of the people you ask for help may in fact be struggling with these same enemies of fear, self-doubt, and negativity, overthinking, and they could be inspired by the vulnerability that you displayed. Number 9, accept that these enemies will never truly go away. Look, let's just be honest for a second, right? I use the word destroy because I want you to take this topic seriously. I want you to take these enemies seriously. But there is no true way to destroy fear, self-doubt, negativity, overthinking, etc., 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 right? We can minimize their impacts. We can make them so small that they become insignificant in our lives. But we have to be real with ourselves. These enemies will never truly be completely gone. It will be an ongoing battle, but that's okay because you'll be getting stronger. And finally, number 10, take action. You remember that quote that I started out with, that quote from Dale Carnegie, right? I don't want you to fake it till you make it. No, I want you to face it till you make it. You have to understand that these thoughts of fear, self-doubt, negativity, they're only usually worse, right? The thoughts are worse than the act itself. For example, how many times have you thought something was going to be scary or hard? You may even have psyched yourself out about it, only to do it and to say to yourself, you know what? And that really wasn't that bad. I don't know about you, but I got countless times in my life where I could say something like that. We need to keep that mindset when we're battling these enemies, right? I know you have overcome these enemies before. That's the reason you're listening to this podcast or watching this video. So if you've done it before, what makes you think that the next time you face them is going to be any different? You've already beaten them down in so many areas of your life. But you've got to take action. You got to face these enemies head on and watch them begin to cower. All right. On to usually everybody's favorite, the old pro tips, right? Pro tip number 1, stand guard at the door of your mind. I like to envision this as like a bouncer, arms crossed, mean face, mean mugging people, right? You got a little tiny bouncer in your mind. And this bouncer's job is to keep these thoughts of fear, self-doubt, and negativity away. Every time one comes up, bam, stiff arm, get them the hell up out of there. All right, pro tip number 2, you cannot just ignore them, right? I'll give you 3 examples of what happens or what potentially could happen if you ignore these enemies for too long, right? If you don't try to eliminate them, right, or minimize their impact, you're going to learn the hard way, right? Even if there is just a tiny little spark left, you got to understand that one day a fire will break out, right? So if you don't try to completely destroy these enemies, if you leave a little spark of fear festering internally, one day something's going to come by, stoke that spark, and it's going to turn into a fire, right? Another way is they're kind of like weeds in a garden, right? You got this beautiful garden, you got all this beautiful stuff you planted, you've watered, you nourished, you've done all these things, and your garden is beautiful, but you're starting to ignore the weeds. Oh, I'm not going to pay attention to those. I'm not going to pay attention to those. But you gotta think, man, those weeds are going to grow, and they're eventually going to kill your flowers. They're going to take your garden, or in this case, your goals. And lastly, by ignoring them or giving into them, you're only allowing them to get stronger and stronger over time. Like a perfect example of this is like the snooze button. I try my hardest not to hit the snooze button every morning, right? In my mind, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but in my mind, that's like my first task of the day. And I don't want to fail at it, or I don't want to give into it, right? So I refuse to smack that snooze button. I don't want to lose at my first opportunity of the day, right? But you have to understand that one day, you're on a good trend, maybe 2 or 3 days in a row, you're waking up, you're not hitting the snooze button, but then that 4th day, your body's sore, maybe you don't feel like going to the gym or waking up and reading, and you just lean over and you just hit that snooze button. And I mean, it's okay, it's not the end of the world, right? But what you have to understand is the first time is always kind of the simplest, if you will, right? Because it gets, I guess I shouldn't say simplest, I should say the hardest. Yeah, the first time's the hardest. Let me put it that way. Because every other time after that, it gets easier and easier and easier to hit that snooze button, right? Because you've already broken it, right? So I encourage you, we'll keep using the snooze button analogy. If you hit that snooze button, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up. Like we talked about earlier, show yourself some compassion. And the next day, don't even think about it. Nope, get up, get going, right? Restart that clock. Another pro tip, habits. We talked about habits. This is how you're going to attain your goals, by establishing and following through with small daily habits. What you have to understand is that habits can be either good or bad. You get to decide. But people have bad habits just as much as they have good ones. So yeah, you can have habits, but you damn sure better make sure they ain't bad ones, right? And the last pro tip, this is a fine line, right? But please do not mistake self-doubt with humility, right? They are not the same. They're not. Right? I know we walk around and we like to be humble, right? We like to display our humility to others because we want to be approachable. And let's be honest, none of us think we're better than anybody else. Nobody wants to walk around looking down at their nose at people. So we got to be very careful with our words. When somebody comes up and they're like, oh, that's a great job, or you did this great, or you did that great, you got to watch what you say, because what we'll say is, oh, come on, cut it out, man. I'm not that good. Like, come on, cut it out. I'm not that good, right? That's humility. But if you're not careful, that can turn into, I'm not good enough. And that's self-doubt, right? So understand that self-doubt and humility are not the same thing. Don't confuse the two. All right. So in wrapping up, let's quickly touch on the actionable steps that we went over. Number one, stop making excuses. Number two, take a close look at the people around you, your inner circle. Number three, take a close look at that diet. And we ain't talking about food. All right. Number four, practice self-compassion. Number five, stop comparing yourself to others. Number six, talk to yourself. Don't listen to yourself. Right? Number seven, stop giving these enemies power, i.e., your attention. Number eight, ask for help, their strength and vulnerability. Number nine, accept that these enemies will never truly go away. And finally, number 10, take action, right? So what I think you need to understand is that destroying these enemies needs to be a part of your goal-setting strategy. You know that fear, self-doubt, negativity, overthinking, self-sabotage, they're going to rear their ugly heads. So how are you going to handle it? That's what you need to start figuring out. You got to remember, at the beginning of this episode, I told you that you were in a fight. You cannot underestimate these opponents. They are strong, they are real, and they will beat you down if you allow them to. They will beat you into a life of mediocrity if you allow them to. Man, you are in a fight, all right? Right? But now you know how to defend yourself. So the real question is, what the hell are you going to do about it? In closing, I always got to say thank you for spending time with me today and allowing me to invest a little bit into your development. If you got anything from this podcast or know someone who needs to hear this message, please like, share, comment, or subscribe, or all four, right? I'd appreciate it. But until next time, please keep searching for the codes to unlocking your fullest potential. Be a catalyst, not just for you, but for all those around you. Take care.